deal. All right, so all those are the kinds of things, and we'll see how you do it. But of course, being creative is important. Coming up with the idea. Just saying, oh, I can build something, but nobody else thought about it, is important. Dealing with the money, you're absolutely correct. If you have that money in hand, you have control, we understand that, and the ability to finance it, all that, and ultimately you have the user as well. And so when we're talking about this process, we're talking about the value, and of course, then figure out the zoning, figure out the market, figure out the positioning of the deal. That's really important. So doing it, though, you have to do it in different forms of ownership. Once again, I'm not going to go deep into the ownership, but there are so many different ways to do it. You need to know what's the right ownership for the right deal. I'm not going to tell you what the right ownership is for the ownership. You don't know what the deal is right here. Other than to say that in most real estate, you want to create a special purpose entity, and that's one acronym we don't have up here, the SPE. All right? That's the way to do it, whether it's formed as a limited liability corporation, an S corporation, or a C corporation. You want to segment, dissociate, put apart whatever you're working on as a project into its own corporate or legal form.
And
so
the preferred method is LLCs?
Well, LLCs are a form of SPE, if you will.
But the preferred one, which one would you
Well,
use?
so in the last 10 to 15 years, they've become a preferred one. I won't say the preferred one, because it doesn't fit for everything. If you may recall, Dr. Forgy said he did a number of deals. It made sense not to go through the complexity of setting up the corporation and doing that. But my guess is, and I always set up a corporation, but I've set up S corps as well, or limited liability corp, or professional corps, depending on the service and the product that you're delivering.
So I mean, on the equity portion, when you're creating an equity company in order to fund a project, LLC or limited liability?
Well, an LLC is a limited liability
Yeah,
corporation, LLC.
But what other one do you use? What other structure of company?
So right now, I'd say that's the preferred structure
LLC
for that particular. So once again, I'm just calling it SPE so I don't bias you in one particular way. Single purpose entity. Yes, or special purpose entity, or you can come up with any other name of it, but basically it stands apart and separate from
That
what's going
stands
on.
up in court when you're going, you're getting sued and your other properties are tied up into that. Does it really stand up?
It depends how good your lawyers are.
Or you can.
Right, Fred? Right. Okay. So there is no ironclad way to deal with it. However, there are ways and there are ways.
Consult with Trump.
Mr. Trump doesn't even use these anymore. All he does is license his brand and his name, and he's out of the game completely. So, I mean,
Wow.
yeah, so he has no liability. After those 4 bankruptcies, which he claims never to have had. So you learn your lesson, and he's got some smart people around there. So, once again, just talking about how you add value, and you look at different ways of financing. When you have to raise equity, remember the first part, when you are actually trying to buy a property, if you will, you've got to figure out where to get the money. And it either comes out of your own pocket, or you joint venture with partners, or some of us call it friends and family. That's the way to look at it. So, different stages of the development game require different kinds of financing in doing this. And so you can put in options too. I can say, hey, I'd like to buy something. I'll give you an option if you give me the money, because there's an upside in the back end there. There are also ways to buy by actually having the seller finance your acquisition. I won't get into the detail of it. I'm giving you the list, if you will, or the menu of how to approach it. So, in fact, we have a contract right now on a property in Atlanta, and it's seller financing. It's known as a purchase money mortgage. Basically, we're acquiring a number of acres of land, and we're letting the seller fund our finance, which means we put less money up to the seller, and it will get paid out at some point over time. And that's really can be done in a number of different forms. Some actually, we've done it in purchase money mortgage. Sometimes you just simply say, hey, Mr. Owner or Miss Owner, let's just become partners. And they'll contribute that property to it. Another way to acquire, of course, is debt. The problem with debt is generally you can't get more than 50% on an acquisition straight up like this. And so that still means you still have a substantial amount of money you're out of government programs too. But that's been harder to do so, but there are options for it. So if you've gotten through the acquisition phase, then what happens? Well, remember, in different kinds or different parts of our process, in the preliminary investigation or the upfront, when you're doing your study and your feasibility, that's all out of your own pocket, yes?
What about PPPs, PPPs, public-private partnerships?
Public-private partnerships are a form of collaboration. They can work very well. We're doing one right now in San Francisco where the city has contributed the land, where the Housing Affordable Agency is making a payment so we can deliver workforce housing. So that can work, but once again, I'm talking about different phases of the project. That gets to a level of complexity that may be for your next course, development number 2. So remember, we said about acquisition was the first part, but now we're in the study phase. It's generally out of your own pocket. Very rare that that will be financed by anything other than you and your partners or your friends and family. And so when you finally have gotten to the acquisition, you'll see that there are lots of different sources of capital. I don't want you to think that they're limited, but what capital comes at each stage of the game generally changes, if you will. So look, if you're doing due diligence on the property, the seller doesn't care about that generally, unless he becomes your partner. So you have to be aware of when and how to do it. Now when it comes to construction, you can usually get actual real debt on the deal. And so you generally don't have to do it out of pocket. The question then is, what's your debt to equity ratio? It'd be interesting to hear what some of you may have said, if you have said any of that on your presentation or project. But generally for construction, we find that you can get probably no more than about 65 or 70%. So you still have equity in the deal, right? Substantial amount that the construction debt covers, and then finally when you get to completion, and now you're doing occupancy, then you actually place a different kind of permanent financing, not construction debt. Construction financing, what distinguishes construction financing from permanent financing? Anybody know?
Short term.
Well, yes, it's short term versus long term.
When you pull the money out of the construction fund, it has to go directly to money construction, like the contractor and the materials and things. You can't just pull that money out and use it for other soft costs.
And you're assuming that you can pull other monies out, but actually that's a good point, because in fact the construction financing and the draws for the money from the bank are tied very directly to the schedule of expenditures and what your contractors actually put out. See,
On the construction financing, you pay interest only?
often that is just the case, correct. So permanent financing amortizes. Construction financing is current, is interest only, and actually they often make you borrow the interest as well as an interest reserve to get that done. Alex?
And then isn't your permanent financing usually replace your construction loan at the end of it?
Yes, it does. That's right. Doesn't always do everything, but usually if you've done a good job of creating value, the permanent financing should more than replace the construction debt. And then, Chad, yes, you take the balance or the difference between the two and the rest and put it in your pocket. And hopefully you finance out or cashed out on the deal. Now, if you have a complicated deal, then you often have to use, maybe the permanent financing isn't enough, and you get what we call mezzanine financing. Have you heard these terms before?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so the mezzanine basically is the additional financing that may help us get to the total capital stack, and it manages to minimize our equity in the deal. And then finally, if we're really in deep trouble, we can get hard money financing, which overcomes problems. Sometimes, if you want to buy a deal, a hard money lender, by my definition, is anybody who charges, I'll say anything over what general bank rates are. So if you can get a good construction loan at 5 or 6 or 7%, and the hard money lender generally charges you 12, 14, or 16, you're in different territory. And hard money lending generally has one important caveat that goes with it. What do you think that is? When you default, they take it. It's theirs. So hard money basically says it's own to loan. That was a joke. It's really loan to own. Nobody thought that. Right. So
mezzanine debt is also higher in interest rate
yes,
than
it
the
is.
others.
So it's interesting. So you're right. Interest rates kind of go up as you look at this chart right here.
Because the risk is
Well, yes. The construction debt is the shortest term risk, and so if the money's out for a year or 2 or 3, then the interest rate generally is less than on permanent debt. If you notice, have you also seen the longer your debt is, the the more expensive it generally tends to be, because the risk of holding it for the bank or the debt lender is greater. Not always the case. There's been what they call inverted yield curves, but that's the case. So if you look at this list here, construction debt, we'll just make it up. That could be 4 or 5% now. The permanent financing might be more so. And then you get a mezz piece, what we call it, 9 or 10. And then these folks, as I said, you don't want to go there.
But you mean like when you get a permanent loan, they also can get like a mezzanine debt, or it's like two different stuff, like it's not, doesn't go in the same.
You only want to use this if you can't finance the deal with the permit. But sometimes you can only finance, let's say 70, 75%, and you want to, let's say, pull your equity out of the deal, if you're going to earn a good return, you might be able to replace it with this higher cost debt. Yes, and I'll get to you in a second.
When the sharks are involved, are those projects successful?
Sure, until they own it. Yes.
When you go from construction loan to the permanent loan, do you have to just refinance when the?
In effect, that is a refinance.
Oh, that is.
So basically, you complete construction, and the terms and conditions of the construction debt are all about when you get your certificate of occupancy.
Oh,
you
that
occupy it,
is.
we're out of here. And it's a different kind of lender than the permanent. Yes.
Does the permanent loan require the construction to subordinate any condition?
All right, so let's put it this way. If you place permanent financing on the deal, then in effect remove the construction debt on it. And yes, by the way, your equity, everything else is generally subordinate to the debt in the deal. Debt occupies the first level. Yes.
I think one of the things that I always struggle to understand until somebody explained to me is that, you know, your construction loan, the reason it can refinance into a permanent financing is you built something that has value, now it has equity. And so at that point, that reduces the amount that your construction loan would be to whatever your permanent loan financing.
All right, let's restate that in another way. So let's assume that you're building, we'll keep the numbers really simple. You have $1 million project, and you're able to finance on construction 70% of it. So $300,000 is the equity you have in the deal. $700,000 is what the construction lender does for you. So now we come to the end of the day, and it's a C of O, certificate of occupancy, and now we have a tenant for a $1 million building. And it may be that the income stream, because remember we did an ERV calculation, was such that, oh boy, now my building is worth 1.2 million. I'll make it that. And so now we have a building that's 1.2 million, and the permanent financing is 70%. We'll say it's the same percentage as what the construction financing is. So the good news is that 70% of 1.2 million takes out the construction financing and actually gives us some cash in our pocket. If we've created value, that's the whole point here. If we haven't created value, then you have a different kind of problem, right? Whose hand was over here?
Just a quick
Yes.
question. The mezzanine debt right now, a good interest rate, you said between 9 and 10?
9, 10, 11, but
Is it
once again,
permanent? How
it's
much?
all depends on the deal. But you're right, if we were doing something today, you know, construction and permanent financing is in the 4 to 6% range generally. Then we go to mezz, which is 9, 10, 11, 12, and then we go to the hard money lenders, to which you don't want to go.
You say construction debt interest rate would be like what?
So a construction debt interest rate is interest only.
No, how much? What number is it?
Okay. Once again, it depends on the deal, but I'd be comfortable seeing something at 4 or 5 or 6%. And that may change when Janet Yellen raises interest rates, but I don't think so. Even 25% for basic rate. And so what I did is I put together this chart and just to try to give you a feel what happens with which kind of financing along the development process. So basically, let's say I've got a property, you know, just an institutional deal. Let's say I built a multifamily apartment complex of 100 plus units, but I had to find the land. I got an option from the seller, and so what I did is I managed to put some money down, and then I'm seeking very conventional financing, if you will, if I'm getting a loan on the land, for example. Nothing fancy about that. And then when I do construction, if you will, which is over in this area after we've done the purchase, construction is here, and if I had an issue, unconventional debt is the mezz or the hard money lender, and I purchase it. When you look at all these paths, basically what we're saying is that you get to the permanent financing, and ultimately you hope that you sell the deal. A lot of us, when we do our projects, actually try to pre-sell what our development is. If we say we can create a certain amount of value, then we in effect have the takeout of the loan, and now I have the ability to finance any one of these pieces within there. Because if, you know, lenders like to know that somebody's at the back end of the deal to buy the deal, or that I've created an income stream that's so substantial that it protects them because it's got what? A nice debt service coverage ratio on the deal. You all know DSCR now backwards and forwards, right? And so to get any of this financing, you have to also know what I call the 5 C's of credit. This is really important. Once again, it'll go up in the blackboard. But all these items are important. Character, capacity, capital, collateral conditions. Let's go through that. What do I mean by that? So capacity, you have to have the ability to pay. There, you know, if the job generates the right income, great. Or if you have the resources that can backstop it through either a guarantee, then the lender is willing to work with you. So capacity is really important. And they look at you and your credit as well. The amount of money that you put in their deal is important. So you've heard the term skin in the game. So if you have skin in the game, the lender once again says, great, you've got the capacity or the ability to do it. And the amount of risk, the money that you place at risk, becomes very important in their estimation. You have to have collateral. And this is the guarantee as we're talking about. So very rarely can you actually do a deal without pledging some kind of collateral. So for example, when you, just individually, when you buy your own home, you're in effect pledging the asset of the house against the mortgage for the property. So you're writing a note that says, okay folks, by the way, Mr. Lender, I will give you the house if something else goes wrong on the deal. And then of course we call it conditions or credit. You gotta make sure that actually you're using the money for which it's stated. Some people take the money and run, and that's not the way to do it here. I know, Paul, you're laughing, but this happens.
I'm just saying that it's terrible that people do that.
That's right. Well, it's all over.
Right.
And then ultimately, I guess it really comes down to you and your personal reputation or your character. And you know, I can remember, and this is important, whether it's in a small deal or a big deal. Many years ago, in the last century, as I like to call it, I built a second home in upstate New York. Now, I lived in New York City, and we had a house that we built on weekends. We purchased a plot of land, and we went ahead, and you know, I acted as my own contractor and designed it, and then hired the folks to build it. And of course, I wanted to get a loan, a local loan, up there because I figured I would do better than if I got a banker in the city. And I can tell you that meeting, and it does work. When you're face to face and they understand who you are, they see what you've done, they've seen your experience and everything, you can get the loan. So by the way, I got a loan. I got a construction loan. Oh, I didn't even have a piece of paper, actually. The lender, Gary Sherwood at the local bank, he was the farmer across the valley who had 300 cows or whatever it was, basically said, I trust you. Now this doesn't happen that often. We shook hands and he said, okay, not a problem. I'll lend you, $100,000. You just come in and let me know when your construction draws are needed. And so I'd come in and say, well, it's time for me to write a $20,000 check. And he'd give me $20,000 just to do, the building, if you will. And so, and then, of course, he converted it. Nice of him to say, well, I like you so much, we'll let you take out the permanent loan on the property as well. So he basically said, not worry. So, but this is about character and capacity. Yes, Alan?
Where was that?
This is in the town of Roxbury, New York, back in 1980 something or other. Okay.
It's a Stone Age.
Stone, well, no, I don't think it's that.
Okay, hold on.
But gentlemen and ladies, you can do that now. So that was just simply, I built a house for $200,000 and I needed money to do it, right? But the point is that how you present yourself, how you sell yourself, how you put these 5 C's together has a real impact on the
Would you say that when you're looking for loans, that for instance you went to a local person, is it better, probably deal, but most of the time is it better to use local financing?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question as you all ripple your pages there and your food. So, by the way, I have found that going for whether you fund the deal with equity or you finance it with debt, that local players have local knowledge and therefore are much more comfortable, especially if we're dealing with what I call small deals. By the way, if I want to do a deal, and I'm finding out this to be the case in West Palm Beach is what we call a tertiary market. A primary market is Miami or San Francisco, where I just was. A secondary market might be Nashville or Raleigh-Durham. Atlanta, I don't know, is somewhere in between. I'll call it secondary. Tertiary is in a market, oh boy, the folks up in New York, they love my property, but they don't want to have anything to do with actually lending any money on it. And so I find that the local construction lenders, the local equity folks or family offices understand the deal. So your best bet when you're doing the small deal is going local. Yes?
And going before you're ready to borrow the money, meet the person, the banker, introduce yourself, build a relationship.
You know, relationships may not be what they used to be, but they still count for something.
They count.
That's correct. Even in this commoditized world that we live in. So I'm going to keep rolling as we're having our working lunch here. And so what I'm trying to do is say, okay, what are some of the contracts? What are some of the methods? What are some of the means of how we get there? And so we're going to have a presentation at 1 o'clock from Styles, and I thought it would be helpful to just talk about, now they've already shown us their residential building. We're going to hear about retail today, but they also do a lot of what we call the mixed-use projects. And I thought if I just talked a little bit about these kinds of projects, it would help you to see you're using the same kinds of ideas, and of course you may be presenting that mixed-use project to me. But I'm focused on the retail right now, because that's really going to be part of our afternoon. And when we look at any kind of mixed-use project, of course we want to do the analysis and our study or feasibility. But the problem and the challenge is what role does retail play in these mixed-use projects? And fundamentally, it establishes character. Remember earlier today we were talking about City Place. It created a character for downtown West Palm Beach, but now City Place is actually, it's 13 or 14 years old. And it's gone through a couple of different life cycles as a result. And so how do you reposition? How do you define your property in that process? And to do it, once again, is looking at some of the key, I'll call it market issues and process. So we're going to find out today, we're going to learn about different kinds of retail centers. I know you read in your book somewhere a little bit about this, but let's differentiate what this is. And so, by the way, when you go to your Publix and you want to get your food, or Publix or Whole Foods, generally those supermarkets are located in which kind of shopping center here? If you look at this list here, which one would you choose to be where most of those supermarkets? Erica?
Community?
I would think it would be community, you're right. That's right. So it basically sits in the middle there, and these centers are defined by not only product mix, but by size as well. We're going to hear about that a little bit today. I'm trying to give a prelude to what's going on there. And so Main Street is just what it's called, Main Street. So how would you define, what would be a good example of convenience retail? A strip mall, maybe, but what kind of retailer within that strip mall?
CVS.
CVS, yeah, that's the first thing that comes to my mind too as well. Because it's no longer just the drugstore, it's kind of like, it's the old general store turned into the 24 stop and go, if you will. So we've got it with community centers, which really are anchored by the supermarkets. Then, of course, we have lifestyle and power center. Anybody want to give me an example of a lifestyle center? Say what?
Whole Foods.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Whole Foods is a supermarket, but often you find Whole Foods in what we'll call a lifestyle center because they denote a certain experience in retail.
It's like a one-story kind of, I wouldn't call it a strip mall, depends on the size really, no?
Yes and no, but here I'm not talking about the physical aspect. I'm really talking about who's in there, yes.
Starbucks?
About like
Well,
the
Starbucks
the
can be
mall.
both. Yes, oh, yes.
You, lifestyle center, you're looking for the whole pieces where people work, live, and what type of retail?
No, so that's mixed use environment, and I'll let you ask.
Well,
A gym.
Yeah.
Spa.
Yeah.
How about
Some
a,
hardware.
Well, we know it's on
how
Paul's
about like a
mind.
high-end mall, you know, these luxury malls?
No, it's very interesting listening to what you're all saying. So lifestyle really is about a certain tenant mix, which could have the Starbucks, some of them have the Whole Foods, some of them could have a spa, if you will, but it's actually trying to target an experience. I keep going back to this word of an experience, if you will. Did you say assisted living? Well, that's a different kind of lifestyle. That's correct. Okay, and one day hopefully you'll make it there. Okay. Yeah, so this is not about physical form. We're not talking physical form. All I'm talking about here is what's in the
Wellness center. What exactly is that?
Pardon?
Wellness center.
A wellness center,
Like a gym.
a gym could be in a lifestyle center or a community center. That's correct. And then ultimately, what's a power center?
Kind of like Gulf Coast Town Center, it's like a giant retailer, it's probably 200,000 square feet plus, you got your big box tenants like Dick's Sporting Goods, you got.
Sawgrass Mill.
Yes.
It's kind of like a giant mall, it's kind of like almost a complex.
Okay, so actually, so Alex is correct in that, and so big users of power centers would be Costco, Best Buy,
Oh, big box.
Target. It's a big box, that's right.
Walmart.
But now he mentioned, you said Sawgrass Mills. Actually, Sawgrass Mills is a hybrid of a lot of this information. It's power, it's lifestyle, it's really, you know, it's the outlet center originally, and it's morphed into something that's different. Steve.
My question answered, I'm sorry, the wellness center, is it just more health or?
Right. Oh, I thought you were saying wellness is weird. So a wellness center is, you know, it's a name that's in search of an identity right now. And so wellness really denotes if you want to be part of a spa, if you want to have some health, medical aspect to it. And the fact that I can't give you a big definition means that nobody else can. So, and maybe that's too broad. But we'll see if we can get there. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because what kind of types of goods and services you have then does affect the kind of real estate that you put together. And so each one of these buckets, if you will, has an impact ultimately now on the physical side and how you put these items together. So in the same way that you might be looking at someone who tells me what's my residential deal with a 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and I've got a health club and whatever, that's a type of residential, which is a multifamily. We can define our retail in the same way. And we'll basically say, okay, now that we've talked a little bit about tenancy, what makes it, now you've given me some of the information, just testing you, which I will. So yes, convenience, I think everybody understands, it's pretty easy. It's what replaced much of what you see or saw on Main Street. I don't know if any of you actually grew up in a Main Street community. Anybody actually grew up in a community where you could walk somewhere? I'm curious, where is that? Avalon, or kind of, where did you grow up?
Down New Jersey.
Okay, yes.
London, England.
That doesn't count.
I mean, edge of the city, like obviously I was just taking train to the city.
Yeah, no, that's correct. And so,
80 Florida.
well, it could be, that's correct. Right. So, I think you've already gotten to the service retail. There's something that people don't often hear about, is what we'll call comparison retail, if you will. And so, big box or power centers, they have a large market, but people actually say, where do I go? Do I choose one over the other? They have a bigger, if you will, market or radius for what's going on, and they can be the anchor or cornerstone in a center. And then we have specialty and lifestyle. They replicate the main streets that don't exist today. And that's really where it's headed, is trying to help you understand, it can be any number of these items, but it doesn't ever have a real anchor. I'm trying to think, what's, and there's a great lifestyle center near where I am in Palm Beach County called Downtown of the Gardens. There is no one anchor. Yes, it's got a Whole Foods, it's got the movie theater, but it's got a plethora of restaurants. That's one of my favorite words. And it also has, well, and it has lifestyles such as West Elm, or if you will, or it has the children's store, or it has the wellness or spa. Yes, Amanda.
The fountain plantation, what was that?
Which one?
The fountain.
The fountains, actually, I haven't been to the fountains, so I'm going to ask Dr. Corgi what kind of center that might be. I think it's a lifestyle, but I'm just not familiar with the properties. So a lifestyle, for example, if you look at the Gulf Stream, that's more of a lifestyle center. That's something that maybe you're closer to. Town Center in Boca Raton is a lifestyle center, if you will, the downtown there, but not the malls that we're talking about. So you can go to the wonderful malls, even here in Fort Lauderdale, but there's no real lifestyle center directly here, which is kind of interesting, because there has been and was a main street, and it's known as Las Olas, which in effect becomes lifestyle, but it's a different physical form. Yes?
Seminole Hard Rock.
So I call that a casino. No, but yeah, so what they've tried to do is create lifestyle adjacent to it, but see, that's anchored by the casino, so it's driven, it's no different. In fact, they now have lifestyle centers, but it's not a true lifestyle, it's a destination or entertainment center, which is a little bit different. So if you look at a lot of the stadiums that have been built around the country, if you've been to some of those stadiums, like where the Patriots play, I mean, Gillette built literally an entertainment destination around that. And that's what Hard Rock is, it's entertainment. And it has some of the same stores. Some of these stores, like Starbucks, could be in all of these types, but that doesn't mean that that defines the center. It's the other things that go together with that, yes?
In Fort Lauderdale, like the retail that's in Wilton Manors along that strip, obviously they're catering to a certain type of lifestyle. Would that be a
Right, so
lifestyle
now that's
center,
different.
or-
That's a targeted demographic. So
Right.
having this is funny, having a certain lifestyle is not necessarily the same as the lifestyle center. That's right. I had never thought of it that particular way though, so that was funny, but we'll get to that, yes.
With my internship this summer with Styles, I was basically researching all of these different uses, and they're actually, there's I think the ISCS gives they break it down by square footage. It doesn't apply to every single one, but there's a square footage range that each one of these falls into, like the bigger, the last one, the power center, is like 200,000 square foot, plus Publixes are like, 25 to 50,000 square feet. So instead of the actual what is there, it's more defined by how big it is, and that's really what you can think about. Like, Publix is 30,000 square feet. So that kind of center it's around, that's gonna be the biggest one there. So you can break it down.
And so I'm glad you brought up the ICSC. ICSC is the International Council of Shopping Centers, and they write the book, so to speak. Let's all do it together. So they write the book, and now that Alex said that, I'm going to say it ain't so. And so to simply say what it is by size doesn't reflect what goes in it. To me, for you as developer, you need to know your product, your tenant mix, and then you can define it by the size. So the size is a correlation as opposed to a direct. But it's a good point, because power centers have big box users, and they're bigger. But that alone doesn't give a fair definition. And then we have, if you go beyond entertainment, excuse me, I went too fast on that, whether it's with casinos, or whether it's with stadium and other kinds of developments like that, then we have the culture, if you will. And so museums and others now are anchor elements. I don't know if you think about it in the same way, but clearly if you look at the older main streets, they used to be anchored by the theater, the library, the museum, the government center. So now, by building these new centers, we can use those as anchors as well in new developments. So it replicates what was in the past. So let me just come up with a final chart, if you will, on retail. And that really is we talked about different types of retail, and so I hope and expect that you'll ask these questions of Styles and how they define it, because it'll be interesting to see what they say, because they field it, okay? But it also then ultimately defined by the market. And so if you look at your market, each one of these kinds of targets helps to generate a different kind of center. So if I've got nearby and local neighbors that I'm focusing on, that's the community center, frankly. If I'm on site or literally downstairs, that's really Main Street, so to speak. Drive-by, transit, that can be convenience, if you will, and then regional, then all of a sudden you're thinking about power center, destination, and entertainment. So overlaying your markets and targeting then gives you the ability to see what's the right kind of retail to build in a bigger place as well. So let's see, I'm looking at my watch here and that clock. I'm going to switch here. I think this would be a good time while you're still eating, or maybe you've finished eating so you don't choke on the results. I'm going to show you, you all got your tests back, so let's just go through the problems and the tests. That's fine. Yes? Oh, yeah, we'll do that. So, what I'm trying to do, are these the originals, or you?
Yes, those are the originals.
The originals, and everybody has their copy. Excellent, great. So, I'm racing towards 1 o'clock when we have our guests coming, and then they'll be here till 2:30 or so, and I guess I'll eat this one there here. Thank you. And then after that, we'll go into our presentations, and we'll work the rest of the afternoon to get around that way. So let me find the exam. And then if we have time, we can go back to some of these other items. Okay, great. So we kind of answered that first question when we went through the concepts, if you will. And once again, there are more than 3 ways. So I'm going to be very interested to see what you said. And so I just want you to think, you've got to be creative in all these different ways of putting a deal together. So, how did you all do in number 2? So,
it's funny because number 2 and number 3, you have to answer the number 3.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought it was, but
well, let's see what I do. I don't know what we think I get.
That was like a preview.
Well, let's put it this way. I asked the question because it then led you to what should be the right way to get to the next one. That's correct.
I still got it wrong.
So, as he announces to the class, that's fine. So, but you may recall, we had that presentation, which you all got out in Blackboard, when I talked about retail, and I went into it deep when we talked about the Detroit issues of how did we find out and figure out what's going on with measuring our market and retail. And remember, we've got demand and supply. This is all about demand and supply, right? And so buying power, the income, or what you call disposable income or buying power, a number of different names, times the population or the households, really tells you the total capacity of the market. Remember when we talked about Detroit, we said, oh my goodness, that marketplace could spend $350 million in that marketplace. And we identified in that particular market that in fact about 125 million were of that particular service goods that could have been spent by the Hispanic and the Mexican population in that location. And so that is the demand side of the equation. But the supply, actual retail sales, you can measure this, once again, looking at sources, and you actually say, okay, what was spent in the neighborhood? You can go to ESRE, you can go to Claritas, all these other GIS-type resources that tell you what's going on. And so when you look at this, demand and supply, what's the difference between the two? It's the gap. It's the unmet local demand. It's not a fancy term.
My answer for that one was a seller's market.
So, but we didn't know which was higher or lower. And so it's funny. It's not that it's a seller's market. Remember, we're just talking about what's the difference between it. A seller's market, that's funny. We can define a seller's market not necessarily about retail. It can be any environment. So the market of when the seller manages that. So you could say, oh my goodness, is this a seller's market? Let's go back to Detroit, because there's $100+ million of capacity and I'm only seeing, $25 million worth of stores? No, it means it's unmet. We don't know if the seller can actually capture that because they don't know if they have the right product, whether they're delivering the right kind of service. So I hope some of you got this right, but whether you got it right or not, now you know it, okay? And the issue here is really making sure you understand both sides of the equation. Because any deal, and you're going to show it in the presentations this afternoon, hopefully. What's the demand, what's the supply, and that will help us figure out why you got to what you got on that. And if you didn't do that, then what you did was you kind of made it up, right? And some of you, I'm sure, have good crystal balls. We know that Tula has one on her phone, and that might work. So, all right, let's go to the next question. What is retail market capture? Really, it's just the definition of what you can, or what the ability is of that retailer to compete for those stores. When you want to capture the marketplace, and the stores are trying to do that, then you're basically saying, I want to get that slice of the market. So let's do some math. Yes, Alex, you have a question? Or?
I can do the math this time.
Okay, well, it's always good when people can get the math done, right? And I don't know if I have to go on the board on this one. All right, so if the unmet demand, if the retail gap is $35 million and the capture rate is 6%, we're just saying, okay, if my store can capture 6% of that, 6% of 35 million is $2.1 million. Yes, Victor.
No, I think I wasn't paying attention. I did 35,000 instead of 35 million.
Okay.
So I'm missing 3 zeros.
So I hate to say it, but good math skills are important as a developer. Okay, and that's why we have calculators that help you. Right, and so you may see that I'm taking you through these problems, and I'm going to say it again: drill, 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 practice, 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 and then you get the hang of it. And I fully expect that by the time you leave this course, this will be second nature to you, even if it isn't right now. And so I hope you all understood that if the potential capture was $2.1 million, and then they said, hey, if I can sell all that stuff, candy goods, or whatever it is in my store for $150 a square foot, that tells me that I can build a 14,000 square foot retail presence in the marketplace. Now, by the way, if, for example, the store sales in the market were $210 a square foot, what would be the size of the store? Pardon?
10,000.
10,000, that's right. So all I did was say, hey, 2.1 million is the market out there that I can capture, and obviously if the sales per square foot go up, the size of the store to do it is less. And then the opposite, if sales are lower, then it means I need or want a bigger store to get it done right. And then you had to know the size of the store to just simply figure out what the costs were to build the store. If you got 14,000 square feet, you probably got the $980,000. Some of you got it, I'm sure. Okay? Some of you may not have, but now you do. You have it. So then, fourth question. I asked this question before. I hope that everybody got this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. Okay, fine. It's the same question as before, so everybody knows it's all about the triple net lease.
I added 8% rent too. Is that okay?
So
Both.
I'll look at what you wrote.
Triple
but
net lease with percentage
for the
rent
percentage,
combined.
that's great. That's fine because then as a developer, you're getting it on the front end of the base rent and you're getting it on the back end. So why do they prefer the lease? Because it shifts all of that responsibility, the cost, to the tenant. It makes it a nice, easy deal.
So
That's
like I
right.
said, save the money of all overhead expenditures based on the development.
That's a close enough answer.
How about to minimize your operating expenses?
But it doesn't minimize it, it eliminates it.
Shifts all the
So you may not get the answer right, Dennis. All right, so, but once again, we've got to have a mindset. Our role as developers, really two things. Minimize what? Risk, and maximize profit and return. Yeah, definitely. And it's the way to go. And I say, let's see. You know, the next one, of course, is a question I think I asked before. I didn't change a single number.
No.
I hope you all got that 931,423. This is the identical question that we had before. Do you want me to go through it?
No, but I think we gotta.
What do you mean, is the same question?
Yep.
Yes.
I didn't get my paper back, but Carol, I got the
Wait, what?
I didn't get my paper back the last class, but Carol.
Oh, but see, Olivia, you didn't come back to class and see the answer. That's why. Nobody else got their paper back. I'm going to give it back to, we regress, but everybody got their paper back when we did that. So this is why being in class is so important. Okay, so do you need me to go through this calculation? No, I shall. No? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. All right, so now we have another land problem. We don't, but guess what? You're going to learn to like it yet. Why? Because when you drive by that site and you see this an acre or this side, you want to figure out what can you do with that site. And if you leave square footage or area on the table, you're leaving money on the table. Right? And so let's just do that together. Okay. Did anybody actually draw it out on their notes?
Yes.
That's okay. Sometimes visualizing this can really help. So we have a 10-acre site, right, folks? And let's assume that this is, I'll make it up, Broward Boulevard, okay? And we have 800 feet of frontage, right? So now what was the next item that you had to solve for? You know that you've got 10 acres and 800 linear feet of frontage.
Well, you need your total square feet, and you need the sides.
Right, okay, so
The depth of land.
So you had to get the total square footage first, right? So what's the total square footage?
10 times 43, 560.
Yes, he knows this number now. Remember that, folks?
Sure.
Yes. Okay, so we have a total square footage of 435,600, right? Now you can get the side or depth dimension, correct? And what did you come up with?
5 something.
5 something. No, we need exact numbers.
No.
Well, is it correct to say because it's a rectangle, you can just double that number?
Double what number?
If the side is 800, the other side is 800 as well, right?
Not at all. So that's why this is not a square piece, it's a rectangular piece. And so,
544.50.
and Chula, say that again?
544.50.
Right, so basically we take this number, we divide it, and I'm not getting good ink here, and let me go to this one. And so the equal sign here basically is 544.50. So basically, this dimension on here is 544.5 feet.
Right.
Okay, so we're almost there, right? So now we know the dimensions of our parcel, which is really important, right? Because we've got setbacks. So I could find the setback everywhere, right? 25, 25, 25, 25. So to get to this answer, who wants to take me there? What am I multiplying and dividing, Steve?
We're going to subtract 50 square feet from both sides first.
Yeah, that's right. Just math here, so all of a sudden we've got 800 less 50, which is 750. And then we have 544 minus 50.
490 to 450.
That's correct. And that equals my 370,000. And so, for example, if you had let's say in this location, Fort Lauderdale, that the zoning regulation said you could build to an FAR of 0.5. Remember what an FAR is?
Yeah.
Floor area ratio. And so if you could build to a 0.5 FAR, and we know that we've got 370,875 square feet, how big a retail center or anything can go on this property?
What's that, 0.5?
0.5.
But isn't the definition of,
Pardon?
isn't the definition of FAR for the entire area, not just the setback area?
It's for the entire site, so keep going.
185,400.
Right, but remember, we defined our site that we could build on was here. Now, so it's interesting. So the floor area ratio depends now on the zoning. So most places would say, oh, I can give you a floor area on the entire site, which is 435 times 0.5, which is 217,000 and change. But you still have to build it within this area. So I didn't put that on here, but you're right. So it depends on the zoning and the regulations. Some cities may say it's okay, others may say it isn't. So now I want to get to my favorite problem. So this is the third time you've seen this problem, folks, right? So by now, I think you're all going to be really experts at this. I hope that's the case. So I would like to, let's do the math, all right? All right, so yes, Emmanuel, the
If
question?
you have a negative or ROE,
ROE,
yeah, return on equity.
yes. What about it?
I just got to
Just want to make sure you know what it was, okay? So, you know, lots of acronyms, and I don't always define them, but by now, once again, it just should be in your vocabulary, and it's pretty good. All right, great. So, who shall we pick? Who would like to just tell me what the NOI is on this deal? What is my net operating income? I'm not going to put the numbers up here yet. Let's just do it before I do my answers. All right, Emmanuel, why don't you start off then?
7. Oh, the word gets.
I want the first one. What is the net operating income on this property?
711,250.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd like you to tell me how you figured that out.
So you have 50,000 square foot of usable space, and then it's at 22.50 per square feet.
Yeah. And that gives you what number?
1,125,000.
Right.
And then your occupancy is at 85%, so you multiply by 85. I mean, by 85. Which lands you at 956,250.
I'm gonna make sure you got your numbers right before I put this up. Did I get it different?
I got the same.
I got the same too.
All right. So 95625. All right.
And then you subtract by the operating expenses, which is 245,000 a year.
Right.
And that will give you your net operating income at which is 711,250.
Right. Sounds like a store, a convenience store that I know of. Okay. Great. So now, who would like to take me through? We got. Did just about everybody get this? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Fine. All right. Good. So now, what do we have for our actual loan payments on this particular deal?
This is where it gets tricky.
Why?
When you solve, you have more annual loan payments than net operating income.
So you would have that in what circumstance? Because you're using what guideline to figure out what your loan can be?
I'm using the guideline based on the fact that I did not know the, what was it called? No, not that, I forgot what the term. Chat, can I call a friend, Alex?
And Alex, I'll answer, I'll call you in a second. So there's always, unless the project has been redlined or blacklisted by the lender, sure, you can always put debt on it, but the debt will never be more than what your net operating income can be. So Alex, do you want to pick up
I was
this?
gonna say that, with the given terms that you've given us on this deal, that, your debt service is gonna be more than a lot, in terms of the interest rates and the loan that you gave us. So I got a negative, same thing.
So,
Because you have a high interest rate and then you have, 20 years instead of 30 years, it makes the payments more condensed.
so let's go to Carol.
Yeah, when I look at this problem, I saw how much it costs and how much your improvement would be. But I look at the problem from the point of view is, you need to see how much the property can cover, how much it can carry. So I put in net operating income and I divided it by the debt service coverage ratio, which gives me what the project can support.
That's correct.
And what the project can support,
But-
in this case, is different from what the project needs in terms of,
Well, let's go through that line of, so we all see 711 number. So let's follow her line of reasoning and see what happens here. And so we've got the 711, 250. And so Carol took the debt service coverage ratio, right? And so it's 1.25, and looking off my screen here. So Carol, tell me what what our debt service can be if you take that debt service coverage ratio.
you take the NOI,
That's this, correct, folks?
and you divide it by the, where did I have it? On the paper, it's 1.25,
Right.
and how much did that give?
Oh, do you have the number? Who has that number, folks? Victor?
Yeah, 569.
Oh, yeah, 569, and then I divided that by 12
Good.
to give me how much my monthly payment would be. That's what the project can support. And then, so I have my 6.5 as interest. I know how much my payment is. I know the length of the term. So when I input those, I get my present value. And that's how much debt the project can support.
So what's your present value?
My present value, I got 4,175,914,
That's right.
950.
Yeah, I know. Not that a lender would ever give you everything back to a penny, but it's pretty close.
Right.
Good.
So I looked at that 4 million, I looked up at what the acquisition cost, what the improvement, and I see the acquisition and the improvement, we needed 6.935 million. And the loan to value is 85%, so I know the possible loan on this project is not 85% of what we need, and you have to come up with more equity.
Right, so you take this number, and of course you compare it to the 6,935,000. What number did you get? Oh, you didn't go there. Okay. Anybody else go there? Steve?
What's the next question?
Pardon?
I went a different approach, sorry.
All right, so let's finish this approach. All right, so basically, it says here, 2,759,000. See, I got my numbers off here.
Oh.
So basically, if I can take out a loan, let's Carol's reasoning follow through. If we can take out a loan of 4,175,000, then that means that the equity in the deal is this much money, or this much cash, we'll call it, on the deal. And so if we know that's what it is, then we can begin to look at a number of the numbers. So by the way, 569, let's follow her reasoning. That's the debt service. So what's the net cash flow on this property?
142,250.
See if you got that right. Yeah, 142,250. So now this number is critically important, right? So now we know what our equity investment is and what our net cash flow is on this, right? So now if we want to answer that question, what is our return on cost? How would you figure out? Let's assume these numbers are right. What's our return on cost? And then what's our return on equity? So, Victor, go for it.
What I got so far, since I got those other parts right, I got 2.05%.
All right, but how did you calculate that number?
I did, what did I do? Oh, I did the 142,250 divided by the total cost, which is the acquisition cost, and then the tenant improvements.
Okay, that's right. You got 2 point what?
2.05%.
That's right. So basically, the return on cost is at rather low, 2.05%. By the way, there's no negative here because once again, it wasn't the loan to value at 85%. It was the debt service coverage ratio that limited you in the deal.
Alright, I had that problem on this test, because, I mean, I thought about going the other route with equity, but, I mean, normally, if you're a developer, you have a certain amount of money that you put up as an equity. Like,
We never said how much equity would have to be put up in the deal. We only said, what's the total cost? So I wasn't saying, oh, how much cash you have in the deal. You had to figure out what your equity and debt was on this. So we know that the bank would be willing to lend you $4.1 something million. It meant you had to come up with about 2.7 million on the deal.
and if you don't come up with a 2.7 million, that still means that.
Well, then I guess you're not buying the deal.
Exactly.
That's right.
So that, we come to the same answer.
Yes, but we're assuming we all have that kind of deep pocket for the money. Remember, this question wasn't about whether you could do it. It was what the numbers would be, assuming you could do it. And so if I'll go to Victor, let's go to his last calculation here. And so now what's our return on equity? I hope you get that one right.
So do I.
I got very close. Yeah.
13.67.
All right, but how did you calculate it? Once again, I just want to make sure we're in the same ballpark.
Because I got an equity of $1,040,250. I didn't do. I don't know. I'm confused with that whole other part to get us $1 million.
Okay. Alrighty. So look, if you follow through in this reasoning, basically the $142,000 is your net cash flow, and on the total project cost, you get a return of 2%. But the return on equity simply is this $142,000 divided by the cash in the deal, Emmanuel, 2.75 million, and that's 5.6%, 5.16%.
For a Class B building.
Pardon?
For a Class B building, the return is really low, like.
You're right. You're right. So now when you finally get to the last series of questions, would you invest in this deal and why? And my short answer is hell no.
Sir,
But yes.
that's why you should take my paper. 'Cause let me tell you why.
Folks,
'Cause
for
look
the
here,
YouTube.
here's a good argument. You see right here, where I calculated, I subtract the AES.
Yes,
and
that's fine.
142.
Right?
I made a mistake right here and put that.
Yeah,
So
but
real
then
life
you
you
know,
make
but
it.
here's
But I got the next stage right.
So you may be good at math, but you were wrong on your assumptions and your inputs. And so if you were doing the deal, by the way, oh my goodness, do you know what Carol just did? Here, I'm gonna look at her paper, and she said, wow, I could get a return on cost of 10%, and then her return on equity is less, but let's assume her number. So she's ready to buy this deal,
No.
and she's gonna be shocked when she finds out that she's not getting the return she should have gotten.
I said no on this because I would want more than 5.15.
Okay, but so then this leads to, I'm sure, like, some of you got this, and if you got through the calculation, Tula, she is wrong.
5% is not good, especially when you add to that every month you taking money away from the principal.
Yes, that's right.
You're
So
paying down principal.
yeah, so you know, it looks like it's a cool deal, but it really isn't, if you will. And so, all right, we wouldn't do that. So let me go now to this. So I asked the question, what's generally higher? Who said return on cost was generally higher than return on equity? All right, so I want to know why you said return on cost is higher than return on equity.
Well, my argument was the denominator for ROC is greater than the denominator for equity, therefore ROE is generating greater than ROC.
All right, but so you just answered the other question. You just said that ROE is better than ROC.
That's what
And
I.
you just said it was ROC, so I'll accept your answer, but you meant ROE.
I made the same mistake. The answer was correct, but I put the wrong.
All right, but see, this is why, so return on equity generally should be higher. Why? Because equity generally is, you're right, smaller than, I'll read it, don't worry, I'll look at it, don't worry, is smaller than your total cost of the deal. And assuming that leverage works, assuming that the cost of your debt is reasonable, then that's the way to go. And so, you know, I generally say, look, capital as risk at stake, you want to get higher returns, equity gets the higher return. So let's just go through these last few questions here. All right, just a simple question. $250,000 to invest, you're seeking 15% rate of return? Pretty simple, right? 37.5 is your answer. And then I wanted you to see if you could get to the rest of that. And so help me figure out how you came to this next number. You see the number I have here, but Alex, take me to the calculation.
Yeah, I just plugged it into my calculator.
Well, that helps.
Well, I took the, so I took 15 years times 12 equals, and that was my N. 5.5 divided by 12.
Right.
Plug in the calculator, and then, you know, what's it called, 250 I think you use, or, and then.
Right, you're using 65% of that.
65%, and then you use, and you calculate.
So the real challenge here was to understand if you're, once again, you're doing the drive-by analysis, if you will, you got $250,000 from debt, you get your 15% return, but now when you place debt on the deal, what happens to your return? Basically, you're still keeping the same return. My question is, you want to generate that return, so you now have to see what kind of cash flow the property is going to be able to support that 15% return. So what you had to do is solve for the net cash flow on the property. So now you take what Alex said, which is, oh, I've got 15,933. How do I work back to figure out what I can get for that 15% return? All right, I'll grade all your tests and we'll see what it is. You have a question?
Can you go back to number 7?
Yes.
I want to know why we went with the debt coverage service ratio rather than the LTV. Don't we apply 85% to the total construction cost?
All right, so the point is, in that problem, you have to look at it both ways. So if you look at the LTV, and you've got to come up, and obviously if you do 75% LTV, and you compare that to the debt service coverage ratio, if one gives you a negative cash flow, then I guess you can't use that. It doesn't make sense. Usually what happens is that the loan to value often, and it depends on the deal, one or the other is going to restrict your ability to borrow. And so the real, I guess, method or means of this problem was the fact that tell me which is going to be the governing term on the deal. And so in this case, the debt service coverage ratio was. 2 weeks ago when we did the problem, it was the loan to value.
You know, that was the question that I asked you during the test, if you could get a negative cash flow.
Well, but see, if you could get it, yeah, you'd get a negative cash flow, but you wouldn't be doing it because, in fact, the bank won't lend you on that 75% LTV if it produces a negative cash flow. So that's why the debt service coverage ratio became the governor, if you will, on that deal.
But that was my question. If you get a negative number, would you still release the one?
No, but here we go.
But that was, it's a different question now
So-
versus when I asked it earlier.
That's right. So, but you're using, if you're using the debt service coverage ratio, you see that you have a positive cash flow on this deal. And it works.
Yeah.
The bank won't lend you if it doesn't work. And so what you've got to do is look the other way. What will give you the highest return? With negative, you have no return.
So that's what I'm saying. When I came to you with the question, if you could have a negative return, that's pretty much saying that I have this amount of money that I could invest in property and my other options to get from the bank. And you just went into a market analysis to see what's going to end up happening if you end up doing the whole equation. That's the route that I went. If you told me that I could not do a negative value, then I know I have to find more equity to put in the project to make it work.
But see, in this particular case, I follow your reasoning. Does everybody follow what he's saying? So, look, you're right. If it turns out you need to put more cash in the deal, you could say, all right, well then I'll just do a loan to value of 50%, for example, or lesser. But the question was, you know, the bank is trying to help you, figure out what the right terms are. You want to take as much cash as possible. out of this deal. You want to you want the debt to be as high as it can be, and the debt that works on this deal that's the highest should be is under the DSCR, not the LTV.
Yeah, but I looked at it as a market study, not.
Right, but the question wasn't whether or not you should then put more cash in the deal. It's like which one of these terms would you underwrite the deal with? Because this is true. Hey, you could have just bought the entire deal for all cash to get the loan, and you have positive cash flow.
Yeah, but nothing said we could not have a.
So we're trying to solve given the terms that were set before us. Now, if you're negotiating a deal, and if you're like Donald Trump, you can make it however you wish. And in fact, you probably could have come up with the right way to do the deal, given those terms. My question was, which of those terms made best sense? And in this case, the debt service coverage ratio governed it, and you didn't get the answer. Okay, all right, so last question.
One quick question. I totally understand now where I'm coming from, but if we do the first approach, the loan to value, and we're working on the positive, then we just use that.
Well, then what you want to do is, you're looking for the amount that can give you the highest return on equity. So it may be positive, but then why would you do it if the debt service coverage ratio gives you a better return? So why don't I take a breather? We're going to have our guest speaker. Does he need to?
Yeah, I see the presentation real quick.
Well, I have the presentation.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go ahead and just pop it off.
Yeah. Oh, it was as a PDF, not as a.
Oh, it's not as a PowerPoint? Okay.
But it looks fine. Let's see if I can bring that up. Okay.
So, right? Yep.
5 minutes.
I'm assuming it's just screen mode.
Oh, I I'm just saying like.
Yes, hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Yes, pleasure.
So I should come to your class. What was your?
I just put it on here. Just
Right, that's.
But I mean to say, what I plug in right here, I plug in the internet.
Well, that's all. That's fine. And so, I'm very interested in when we get to the case study.
Yeah.
Yes,
They're both here.
Just
Well, Carol, see if my brain's gonna catch up to
Texas. Ran out to the big lead or
I've been with this for a year, yeah. We always learn
maybe Texas is a big deal where I'm from. Pretty good too. You are for an hour?
hi, how you doing? Good to see you again. Just got all my junk here. Okay, great.
Yeah.
This is your deal, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Great. Treat for that. Eat my lunch for that.
Oh, yeah.
Hi there. Mark Troen. Yes, nice to meet you, Justin.
We kind of had to go. Unless you want they used to not have it. They was Nebraska, Miami, one year, you went all over, and that like the same for them, Nebraska, Jazz.
All I really need is, if you're going to do it, I need to write a quick letter of recommendation for you.
Yeah.
And you can send it out. Yes. Right, right.
Yeah, maybe in
I can have mine within a, couple of hours.
Okay, so Monday, and
Just send me an email.
Lighting and stuff. I know you're coming. 99?
Yeah.
What? 99?
So that's what we practice for. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's something. Yeah, you got it already.
But yeah, clearly the shift and clear all. No, it won't take that.
I didn't even see the other side. When I did all the cameras, everything.
You get the shift. And that's just deliberate, which is the only time that you're going to use the begin mode is the real estate finance guys will do a couple of bubbles. Most of the time it's going to be in.
Well, that's not true. You turn it on for a second.
We'll explain all this in the next class, but basically what it's doing is shifting all of the payments one period forward to getting a lot of instead of being let's go ahead and get started, all right? So this afternoon, we've got a number of folks here from Styles Corporation that are going to talk about retail development, actually kind of give a nice overview of some of the different projects that Styles has done, and then specifically go into a case study of one of the more recent projects. And so when start off, we've got Bob Reslow, Jessica Dully, and Justin Siemens. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm glad you guys are all just doing your examining equity because we'll be talking about that really briefly about our case study. Just by way of introductions, let these guys introduce themselves. I'm Bob Reslow. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for Styles. I have 27th year at Styles. I have this strange thing that people like to stay there. In our industry, it's sort of unusual, but our company is a pretty unique place. I started out doing some leasing and zoning for the company. My background, I'm a longtime Daviite. I went to college at FSU, got a master's degree in public administration and finance. My first job out of college was working for the town of Davie as the fledgling town of Davie, and got a job as the assistant city manager straight out of college, which I thought was pretty amazing since I didn't know anything about it, but I had a college degree. Worked for a couple of years and then found out that government really wasn't what I had in mind. It sounded like a good idea, but it was pretty much as the guys I was working with were pretty much what's the least I have to do to get a paycheck. Real estate developer came approached me because he was trying to get a project approved in Davie, and I said, yeah, that sounds really good, especially since the paycheck was right there. And started doing rezonings for him down in Dade County, Broward County. He evolved through him, ultimately got grabbed by Terry Styles back in 1988 to start working for him. So I started out really, my background is probably 75–85% retail. I was building shopping centers before I worked for Styles. Really, I was brought on to build shopping centers for Styles. And to date, I think there is 34 or 38 public shopping centers. One of our best clients, one of my best customers. But we've also do power shopping centers. We do retail under office buildings. We do retail strips, freestanding retail, and we'll give you examples of some of the stuff we're working on. So that's the short version of what I do. And Jessica is with us today, and also Justin. They can introduce themselves and tell you what their background is.
Hi, I'm Jessica Jolie.
That's because I don't.
I think I met you guys during the 8th Avenue tour. I'm a graduate of this program here in 2011. I've been with Styles for just about 4 years now, and I work in development as a development manager, strictly so far on retail development projects, and I report indirectly to Bob. And it's a really good place to work, like you said, and we're happy to tell you about what we do and about some specific projects.
And the project, by the way, the case study we're going to be doing, Jessica was our development manager on that project, so she lived and breathed that thing every single day. We'll talk about it later. Okay. Who are you?
Justin Siemens. I've been with Styles for maybe 18 months now. I came over from Federal Realty Investment Trust, which is a shopping center REIT. Actually, own the tower shops on the street down here. I'm in Bob's Group, Real Estate Investment Group, and I am charged with finding sites, dealing with owners, visioning sites, and doing the performance and the financial analysis.
So he finds the sites, and then once they decide to move forward, then they hand it over to our group, and then we do the day-to-day management and the development.
Yeah.
Or they tell us you're in your mind.
Yeah.
It can't be done. You're out of your mind. And I asked both Justin and Jessica to come today for a couple reasons. Justin's background is a lot of background in finance and the acquisition side. And we'll talk briefly about our acquisition side. But really, he's been transitioning with us is, even though we have an acquisition group, which we'll talk about, he's really acting as a pure real estate developer. His job is to go out and find opportunities, figure them out, get them crafted, design, help get them designed, and really put the deal together and then bring it through our process for a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And it's a tough job because it used to be we'd look at 5 or 7 sites, one would work. In today's world in South Florida, we're looking at 10 to 20 sites together to work. So it makes it more interesting. And Jessica, she'll talk about a case study real quickly here. Nothing's easy. Everyone thinks that, I've driven by that intersection, all of a sudden it's there. You'll see that as we talk about it, not only is it the financial issues that go along with it, you'll see the impact government has to us on a daily basis in these projects, and how complicated that makes the typical real estate development process, especially in South Florida. And we'll talk briefly about that as we go through. I don't need to do a big commercial on Style. Does anyone not know who we are? Oh, that sounds arrogant. Is there anyone who doesn't know who we are, and if you say, hey, I really don't know much about your company, we'll spend a few more minutes on each of these slides. We'll just do it. So, we're sort of unique. Each one of those boxes is typically a separate company. At our company, as we evolved, we started as a construction company in 1952. Terry Styles' dad. And it evolved into a development company, and then everything we did was it was basically this egotistical maniac side of ourselves that no one can do it as good as we can. And so we have a construction company that builds the majority of our projects. And you'll see construction companies can really kill your project if they don't do it well or on budget. So we said, well, you know what, that's not going to happen. We'll just do it ourselves. We have our own architectural group because God knows why we use outside architects when we can have all these people on payroll downstairs who will draw them for us. So really, we became this full service group with our service companies. So our main goal, our two biggest way to create value for our investors is through the development group, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and that's the group I head up. We do acquisitions. We have a fund. We've done acquisitions with institutional guys. Over the years, we've bought about $2 billion of real estate over a 7-year period back in the early 2000s. But the problem is when you're dealing with institutions, they get this piece and you get this piece. And now we're an acquisition fund. We raised private capital this last round. We did a much bigger share of those deals. We took 25 million, leveraged it up to about 100 million, and we've just getting ready to spend our last dollars on that. Now we have a new fund we're coming out, and that's going to try to raise 100 million of equities and then leverage that up to about $200 to $300 million. And Justin's going to talk about why we do acquisitions of real estate and how those returns are important to us. Asset management, we have a whole group that does nothing but once, and you'll see this is, the handoff in our company is, we figure it out, development team develops it, our construction company builds it, and then it's done. We then hand it over to our asset management group and say, here are the keys, try not to screw it up. And then their job is to operate that property through property management. And then make decisions. When's the right time to sell it? When's the right time to hold, keep it? How do those cash flows look? Are cap rates going up? Cap rates going down? Are interest rates going up? Or interest rates going down? Or rents going up? We're going to have another crash and 25% of your tenants going to be moving out. So it really, the asset side of our business is really critical. Leasing and brokerage. We started out doing leasing and brokerage of our own buildings only. And then it just grew and grew and grew. We're now 85% of leasing and brokerage is for third parties. Same things happen with our architectural group. They used to do 85% of Stiles' work, 15% for third party clients. Now it's flipped. They're doing 15% of ours, 85% for other people. So all of our service companies, which are architecture, construction, property management, leasing, and brokerage, are now finding, as they grew, they really now do about 85% of the business for third-party clients, which takes a lot of pressure off us having to produce all the business for them. So those are really the groups. The tenant improvement group, which is there, that's just, again, it's this concept of why do we need 3 or 4 people that do nothing but tenant improvements? Well, if you have office buildings, every single time a tenant moves in or moves out, no matter what that space looks like, it's wrong. Right? You could just built it out 3 weeks ago with new carpet, new walls, new everything. The next guy comes in and goes, that doesn't work for me. It's all got to come out. It's got, he needs a rebuild. Tenants in our shopping centers, we sign a lease with fill in the blank, Starbucks. Starbucks says, here's my work letter. I need this amount of work done before I'll take possession of it. Somebody's got to do it. And Jessica's group is responsible for getting in, like a shopping center where Starbucks is going in. We can have our development manager spend all day trying to figure out what Starbucks' work letter should look like, getting those things built inside the space for them. Or we can take that pressure off our development managers, hand it to our tenant improvement people, and say, you guys deal with that because our development managers are too valuable to spend trying to figure out should the toilet be over here or over there. So those are all the different parts of Stiles. It truly is. It's a great logo. Whoever came up with that. Invest, build, manage. There was a big argument with our construction guys. They wanted to say build and invest. They said no. So invest, build, manage is really what we do. So that's the longest. I'll let you finish the bike. I have no idea what's next. By the way, I just came back from an overseas vacation and got in around midnight, so my brain is still not working properly. We didn't really rehearse, so.
We prepared the slides before his vacation.
Yeah, so anyway, it looks like I'm supposed to be shutting up here and talking a little for us tonight. Really, some of the things that we do are competitive advantages, identifying opportunities. These are just examples of some of the things that we find out in the marketplace, and we, like it says, take advantage of those opportunities. In the downturn, for the near crash, 2007 and 2008, lots of things became available, and we had the opportunity to take advantage of those things and really do very well with them. Some examples, we bought debt on a half-finished shopping center in Cold Springs, and sample in full 41. The second half of the shopping center, the walls were up, and that's it. It wasn't completed. Because it wasn't completed, all the anchor tenants in phase 1, including Best Buy, Giants Fabrics, put the landlord in default for not finishing the shopping center. The owner the shopping center just walked away, just disappeared. And Wells Fargo ended up taking back the property, and we bought the note from Wells Fargo. It was a $26 million note. We bought it for $13 million. And then we had to put $6 million into it to get the project completed, but we did sell it and did really well with it. So it was great timing. And but when that crash happened, everybody and their mother was trying to buy these distressed properties. So it got real competitive. Fortunately, we have a great relationship with Wells Fargo. We lend on almost 75% of our projects, so that helped. Distress owner sale with the point. This was the university. We built it was a piece of property that went up for foreclosure in Orange County. Nova wanted a new building up there, and we did a pre-sale to Nova, actually, where we developed the property. We handed over the keys, and then they had to purchase it from us at the end of the day. Corporate real estate transactions. Franklin Templeton, you've probably heard of them, big investment group. They needed new headquarters after the hurricane. Wilma, I guess it was. They were on a building in Fort Lauderdale where the windows got blown out. Franklin Templeton was basically on Broward Boulevard and Federal Highway, with their papers and files strewn all over the place. This was our headquarters building downtown, and they said, we need a headquarters, and it needs to be impact resistant, generator, fully capable to withstand hurricane. We had just built that for ourselves with that same. They came to us and they said, we'd like to buy your building, which we were currently occupying for our headquarters. We said no. And then we found out how much money Franklin Templeton really has. It was like, look, you can make an offer, but we're not moving out of the building for our own building that we built for our employees. 6 weeks later, we were looking for a new home. And really, what we did is we took the building next door, where we're currently in, which was built in 1948 or 52. Gutted it for the second time and turned it into a hurricane impact building, and that's where we now occupy downtown Fort Lauderdale. Headquarters relocations, working with guys like AutoNation, building their headquarters in downtown Fort Lauderdale, building new prototypes for like West Marine, where they, that was the old lumber, 84 lumber. We bought half there, some people that knew Cleveland could actually look for retail. Distress owner, probably the best Publix I've ever done financially is down in Miami. We still own it. We will never sell that property. It was right at the crash, and this was a site right on Biscayne Boulevard, 17. Towers everywhere, all these condo towers, empty condo towers. But this site was owned by a group out of Houston, I believe it was. They had already gotten approval for a 480-unit condo, 50 stories, got all the governmental approvals, drew it up, it was a couple $1 million for plans, got it fully permitted. They had a building permit in their hands. They paid $15 million for that piece of property. We bought the note from them for $7 million and went in and built a Publix, which we'll show you a little bit later, with about 10,000 feet of shops with 2 levels of garage. It's corner to corner, jammed in there. What makes that property really valuable, one is they claim it's the #2 grossing Publix in the chain. It's astoundingly busy, but more importantly is we didn't have the nerve to do, if you were building it today, you'd build an 80-story building on top of it. You would build those 450 or 500 condo units on top. So we're going to wait out the Publix. We got 52 more years left on the lease, and the day that lease is over, that building comes down, and we hope that our grandchildren can go build the tallest building in Miami, because it truly is a square block in downtown Miami. So it's a unique opportunity. But right now, it's highly underutilized as a very busy Publix. So we'll keep it moving. And our platform really is Florida. And we're going to talk about our second platform and evolving third platform in North Carolina and also Nashville. But we've been developing in Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, West Palm